Your body has been sending you signals, small ones at first, a slightly weaker stream in the morning, a hesitation before things get going, a night interrupted once when it used to be none. And then the signals get a little louder. 2 interruptions, 3, the sense that you never quite fully empty, the low-grade awareness that something in this department has quietly changed and that you've been hoping it would resolve on its own. I'm Dr. Fernanda Oliveira, board-certified urologist, and today I want to talk about the prostate, not in the fearful, clinical way that sends men searching anxiously online at midnight, but in the honest, practical, reassuring way that I wish every man over 50 could hear from a doctor they trust. Because the reality of prostate health after 50 is far less frightening and far more manageable than most men assume when they first start noticing these changes. My dear friend, if any of what I just described sounds familiar, the interrupted nights, the reduced flow, the discomfort that nobody talks about, please know that you are in very good company. Millions of men just like you are navigating these exact experiences right now. I see it every single day in my practice, and I see it across every background, every lifestyle, every level of fitness and health consciousness. This is not a sign that you have failed to take care of yourself. This is biology, common, manageable, and in most cases, genuinely responsive to the right daily habits. And habits are exactly what today is about. 5 specific daily habits that I have seen in 15 years of clinical practice make a real and measurable difference in prostate health and urinary comfort for men in this age group. Not supplements, not procedures. 5 things you can begin doing or doing differently starting today that address the underlying mechanisms driving these symptoms at their source. But before I walk you through them, I want to make sure you understand what is actually happening inside your body. Because men who understand the why are the ones who stay consistent with the what. And consistency, as I'll explain toward the end of today's conversation, is the single most important variable in whether any of this actually works. Let me start with a patient story because I think it will land differently than statistics or anatomy descriptions. A man came to see me, early 60s, someone who had been active his whole life, ate reasonably well, didn't smoke, limited his alcohol. He was waking up 3 times every night. Not occasionally, every night reliably, without exception. He had been dealing with this for about 18 months before he finally made the appointment because he had assumed, as so many men do, that this was simply aging, that the nights would be interrupted from here on out, and the best he could do was accept it. When we sat down and I asked him about his daily habits in detail, several things became immediately clear. He was sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day since retiring. He was drinking most of his fluids after dinner because that was when he remembered to hydrate. His diet had shifted toward more processed convenience foods since he'd stopped cooking as regularly. And he had stopped the morning walks he used to take during his working years. None of these things felt dramatic to him. Each one seemed like a minor, understandable lifestyle shift, but together they had created an internal environment that was actively worsening his prostate symptoms, increasing the inflammation around the gland, reducing the circulation to the pelvic region, overloading his bladder at night, and disrupting the sleep cycles that his body needed to regulate inflammation and maintain tissue health. We made 5 targeted changes: no medication, no procedure. 5 habit adjustments implemented consistently over about 3 weeks. He came back and told me he was waking up once per night, sometimes not at all. His daytime flow had improved. He felt more comfortable, more in control, and this is the part I find most meaningful, more like himself again. Because when basic physical functions are disrupted, when sleep is fragmented and daily comfort is diminished, it affects everything: mood, energy, confidence, the quality of daily experience. And when those functions begin to recover, the restoration goes deeper than the symptom itself. That recovery is available to you. Let me explain why by starting with what's actually happening inside the prostate as men age. The prostate is a small gland, roughly the size of a walnut, that sits just below the bladder and surrounds the upper portion of the urethra, the tube that carries urine out of the body. In younger men, this relationship is comfortable. The gland is compact, the urethra passes through it freely, and urinary flow is easy and unobstructed. But as men move through their 50s and 60s, the prostate has a natural tendency to enlarge, a process so common it affects the majority of men to some degree during this period of life. As the gland grows, it presses inward on the urethra. Think of a ring around a garden hose. As the ring tightens, the water flow becomes weaker, more effortful, less complete. The ring doesn't have to close completely to significantly affect the flow. Even modest pressure changes the picture. But here is what I need you to understand, because it completely reframes where the solution lives. Prostate enlargement is a biological reality of aging that we cannot stop entirely. What we can significantly influence is the degree of inflammation that surrounds that enlargement, because inflammation is what turns a modest anatomical change into a serious symptomatic one. When the prostate tissue is in a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation, which is directly influenced by lifestyle factors including diet, movement, sleep quality, and hydration habits, the gland is effectively swollen beyond its resting enlarged state. It presses more firmly on the urethra. The surrounding tissue is more reactive and sensitive. The bladder, responding to signals from inflamed tissue nearby, becomes more irritable and more likely to generate premature urgency. And the whole system, urethra, prostate, bladder, pelvic floor, operates under more pressure than it should, producing symptoms that feel significantly worse than the anatomical situation alone would warrant. Remove the inflammation or meaningfully reduce it, and the same degree of enlargement produces significantly milder symptoms. I see this in practice constantly. Two men with similar prostate size on imaging, one with high dietary and lifestyle inflammatory burden, one without, and their symptom profiles are completely different. The anatomy is similar. The internal environment is not. And the internal environment is what daily habits determine. Now, there is a circulation piece to this that I also want to address directly, because it connects the prostate conversation to the broader framework of male health after 50 that we've been building across many videos on this channel. Prostate tissue, like all tissue, depends on adequate blood flow for its health and regulatory function. Healthy circulation delivers oxygen and nutrients to the gland, supports its immune function, and enables the natural anti-inflammatory processes that the body uses to manage tissue health on a daily basis. When circulation to the pelvic region is compromised, as it is in men who sit for extended periods, who are insufficiently active, whose vascular health has been gradually declining, the prostate sits in a relatively poorly perfused environment. Its ability to manage the normal inflammatory processes of aging is reduced, and symptoms worsen as a result. This is why movement is not a peripheral suggestion in the context of prostate health. It is a direct circulatory intervention. Every time you walk, every time you stand and move after a period of sitting, you drive fresh blood into the pelvic region. You reduce the stagnation that allows inflammation to accumulate. You support the circulation that the prostate depends on for its own maintenance. 10 minutes of walking is not just good for your heart or your weight. It is specifically mechanically beneficial for the gland we are talking about today. There is also a hormonal dimension that deserves mention without overcomplicating things. As testosterone declines with age, its conversion into a more potent form called DHT, dihydrotestosterone, plays a role in driving prostate tissue growth. Simultaneously, the balance between testosterone and estrogen shifts in ways that can increase inflammatory sensitivity in prostate tissue. These hormonal changes are biological realities, but they are not fixed variables completely outside your influence. Sleep quality affects testosterone levels. Diet affects the inflammatory hormonal environment. Movement affects the metabolic conditions under which these hormonal processes occur. The 5 habits I'm going to describe address this hormonal dimension indirectly but meaningfully, not by targeting hormones directly, but by creating the systemic conditions in which hormonal balance is better supported. I also want to say clearly, as I always do, if you are experiencing severe symptoms, significant pain, blood in the urine, complete inability to urinate, or any sudden dramatic change in your urinary function, please see a qualified urologist right away. This information is educational and not a substitute for proper medical evaluation. What I'm discussing today is appropriate for the common, gradual pattern of age-related prostate and urinary changes, not for acute or serious conditions that require clinical investigation. For the man whose experience is the familiar, gradually worsening pattern of weaker flow, nighttime interruptions, and incomplete emptying, the 5 habits I'm about to describe are your roadmap. Each one addresses a specific mechanism. Each one is simple enough to begin today, and their combined effect, applied consistently over 3 to 4 weeks, tends to produce improvements that are genuinely meaningful. Not dramatic pharmaceutical-grade suppression of symptoms, but real, sustainable, biology-based recovery of comfort and control. In a moment, I'm going to walk through each habit in specific detail, what it does, why it works for the prostate specifically, and exactly how to implement it in a way that fits into a real daily life, rather than requiring a complete overhaul of your routine. And I'm going to be honest about the one mistake that undermines all 5 of them simultaneously, even when men are doing everything else right. That is exactly where we're headed next. 5 habits. That is genuinely all this takes. Not a complicated protocol, not an expensive regimen, not a dramatic restructuring of your life. 5 targeted daily adjustments that address the specific mechanisms driving prostate symptoms after 50, and that, applied consistently, produce real improvements in the quality of your days and the quiet of your nights. Let's go through each one with enough detail that you understand not just what to do, but precisely why it works. Because when you understand the mechanism, the habit stops feeling like a rule imposed from outside and starts feeling like something you genuinely want to do for your own body. The first habit is smart hydration timing, and we've touched on this in our previous video, but I want to address it specifically in the context of prostate health because the connection is direct and important. The bladder and the prostate are neighbors, physically adjacent, functionally interconnected. When the bladder is overfull, particularly at night, the pressure it exerts on the surrounding tissue, including the prostate, increases. In a man whose prostate is already enlarged and whose urethral channel is already somewhat compressed, additional bladder pressure from excessive fluid intake before bed is exactly the wrong condition to create. It amplifies the symptoms that the anatomy alone would already be generating. The correction is front-loading your fluid intake. Drink the majority of your daily water in the morning and early afternoon. Be consistent and generous with hydration during daylight hours. Your kidneys, your circulation, and your prostate tissue all benefit from adequate daytime hydration. But allow that intake to taper naturally from mid-afternoon onward, and stop significant fluid consumption 2 to 3 hours before you intend to sleep. This gives the kidneys time to process the day's fluid load before you lie down, so that the bladder enters the night at a low starting volume rather than actively filling during your early sleep cycles. One specific addition I recommend in the morning, both for its hydration benefit and for its anti-inflammatory properties, is warm water with the juice of half a lemon and a small pinch of Ceylon cinnamon. Start every day with this before anything else. The lemon provides vitamin C and antioxidants that support the body's natural anti-inflammatory processes. The cinnamon offers mild metabolic support and blood sugar stability that has downstream benefits for the hormonal and inflammatory environment throughout the day. And the warm water itself begins rehydrating the body after overnight fast in the most gentle and absorbable way possible. This morning ritual is 2 minutes and costs almost nothing, and it sets a biological tone for the day that supports everything else on this list. The second habit is daily movement, and I want to be very specific about this because I think the vagueness of exercise recommendations is one of the main reasons men don't follow them. I am not asking you to join a gym. I am not prescribing a fitness program. What I am asking you to do, based on 15 years of watching this produce reliable results in my patients, is walk for 20 to 30 minutes most days of the week and stand up for 2 to 3 minutes every hour during the periods when you are otherwise sitting. The walking provides sustained circulatory stimulus to the pelvic region. Blood moves through the vessels supplying the prostate and the bladder. Oxygen and nutrients are delivered to tissue that needs them. Inflammatory byproducts are cleared. The lymphatic system, which plays a significant role in managing tissue inflammation, is activated. All of this happens simply from the mechanical act of walking at a comfortable pace. You do not need to be out of breath. You do not need to feel exertion. You need to be moving regularly and consistently in a way that keeps the pelvic circulation active rather than stagnant. The hourly movement breaks address what sitting specifically does to pelvic pressure. When you sit for extended periods, the weight of the upper body compresses the blood vessels and tissues of the lower pelvis. The prostate, the bladder, and the pelvic floor are all under sustained mechanical pressure. Standing and moving briefly every hour releases that compression, restores circulation, and prevents the accumulation of pelvic tension that worsens both urinary symptoms and the inflammatory environment around the prostate. Set a reminder on your phone if you need to. 2 minutes of standing and walking every hour adds up across a day in ways that are physiologically meaningful, even though each individual break feels trivially short. The third habit addresses the inflammatory piece directly through diet, and I want to focus on two sides of this: what to reduce and what to add, because both matter and neither requires dramatic dietary overhaul. On the reduction side, the two most significant dietary contributors to prostate inflammation are processed foods and excess refined sugar. Processed foods are typically high in refined vegetable oils rich in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote the inflammatory pathways that worsen prostate swelling and urinary symptoms. Refined sugar drives insulin spikes that create a pro-inflammatory hormonal environment. I am not asking you to achieve dietary perfection. I am asking you to reduce these two categories meaningfully, to make them the exception rather than the daily norm, because the shift in your body's inflammatory burden will be felt in the prostate region within weeks. On the addition side, the foods with the clearest evidence for supporting prostate health include tomatoes, specifically cooked or processed tomatoes, which make lycopene, their primary protective compound, more bioavailable than raw tomatoes do. Leafy green vegetables, which provide folate, vitamin K, and the antioxidants that support the body's cellular defense systems. And healthy fats from sources like olive oil, avocados, and nuts, which provide the anti-inflammatory fat profile that the body needs to counteract the pro-inflammatory inputs of a modern diet. A simple evening drink that I recommend as a gentle daily anti-inflammatory support is warm water with half a teaspoon of ground ginger and a teaspoon of raw honey. Ginger has well-documented anti-inflammatory properties and supports circulation. Raw honey provides liver glycogen support for overnight metabolic stability. Take this 45 minutes before bed as part of your wind-down routine. It is not a treatment. It is a small, consistent, targeted daily input that supports the tissue environment you are trying to improve. The fourth habit is one that most men have genuinely never considered in relation to their prostate. It's bladder behavior, specifically not holding urine for extended periods. When the bladder is allowed to become overfull before voiding, the pressure it exerts on the surrounding structures, including the already compressed urethra and the adjacent prostate tissue, increases significantly. Over time, the habit of consistently holding urine too long contributes to bladder muscle changes that worsen urgency and control. The bladder learns to cope with higher volumes, its signaling becomes less reliable, and the mechanical pressure on the prostate becomes episodically intense rather than manageable and steady. The correction is simple awareness. Respond to urinary urges at a reasonable time, not immediately at the first faint signal, which can contribute to bladder oversensitivity, but also not hours after the urge has become pressing. Somewhere in the comfortable middle. And when you do void, practice what I described in a previous video: double voiding. Urinate, pause for 20 seconds with deliberate pelvic floor relaxation, and try again. The second void often produces additional urine that would otherwise have remained as residual, reaching signaling threshold again faster and contributing to the frequency pattern men find so disruptive. The fifth habit is sleep, and I want to frame this not as general wellness advice, but as a direct prostate health intervention, because the connection is more specific than most men realize. During sleep, the body manages tissue inflammation throughout all organs, including the prostate. The immune system conducts its surveillance and repair work. Hormonal balance, including the testosterone to DHT ratio that influences prostate tissue behavior, is regulated during the deep sleep stages. Men who are chronically sleep deprived or whose sleep is chronically shallow are missing this nightly tissue management cycle, and the cumulative effect on prostate health is real and measurable. Protecting sleep quality for prostate health means addressing all the factors that disrupt it: consistent bedtime, reduced screen exposure before bed, the hydration cutoff we discussed, caffeine stopped by early afternoon. Caffeine not only disrupts sleep architecture, but is itself a mild diuretic that increases urine production and a bladder irritant that can worsen urgency. And magnesium glycinate in the evening if appropriate for your situation, 200 to 400 milligrams taken alongside your warm evening drink, which supports the nervous system transition into deep sleep while simultaneously relaxing the smooth muscle of the pelvic floor and blood vessel walls. Please discuss supplementation with your doctor if you have underlying health conditions or take medications. But for most men over 50, this is one of the most accessible and beneficial additions available. Now let me give you the complete daily picture, because seeing how these 5 habits fit together as a routine rather than as 5 separate tasks is what makes them sustainable. You wake up and begin with warm lemon and cinnamon water before anything else. You hydrate consistently and generously through the morning, maintaining steady intake every 1 to 2 hours. You take your walk, 20 to 30 minutes, comfortable pace, most days of the week. During the hours when you're sitting, you stand and move briefly every hour without exception. Your meals lean toward whole foods, cooked tomatoes, greens, and healthy fats, with processed foods and excess sugar reduced but not eliminated in a way that makes the change unsustainable. You respond to bladder urges appropriately and practice double voiding at each bathroom visit. Your evening involves tapering fluids after 5 o'clock, a light dinner finished well before bed, your warm ginger and honey drink 45 minutes before sleep, and a consistent bedtime that protects 7 to 8 hours of genuinely restorative sleep. That is the complete routine. None of it requires equipment. None of it requires significant expense. All of it works on the same underlying system, the inflammatory and circulatory environment that determines how your prostate tissue behaves and how your urinary system functions day to day. What you can expect when you commit to this consistently is a progression that I've watched in my patients reliably enough to describe with confidence. In the first week, the most common change is a slight reduction in nighttime urgency. The trips to the bathroom may still happen, but the insistence of the urge tends to reduce. Sleep feels marginally less interrupted. In weeks 2 and 3, flow quality tends to improve. The stream feels stronger, the emptying feels more complete, and the daytime sense of pressure and urgency begins to ease. By week 4 and beyond, the cumulative anti-inflammatory effect of the dietary and movement changes begins to manifest in a way that feels qualitatively different. A return of comfort and confidence in this dimension of daily life that men often describe as feeling normal again. Normal, that is the word I hear most often. Not dramatic, not transformed, just normal. The ability to sleep through the night or wake only once. The ease of a morning flow that doesn't require effort or produce frustration. The absence of the constant low-level awareness of a body that isn't quite functioning the way it should. Normal is profoundly underrated as an outcome, and it is genuinely within reach for most men who apply these habits with consistency and patience. I want to end with the thing I always come back to because it is the most honest thing I can tell you. Consistency beats intensity every single time in this context. Perfect habits for 3 days, followed by a return to old patterns, produces nothing lasting. Imperfect habits applied regularly over 4 to 6 weeks produce genuine physiological change. Do not aim for perfection, aim for consistency. Miss a day and pick it up the next. Let the routine become automatic rather than effortful. Give your body the stable, repeated inputs it needs to adapt, because the body does adapt, reliably and progressively, when you give it a consistent signal over time. And please, as always, if your symptoms are severe, if there is pain or blood or sudden dramatic change, please see a qualified urologist. These habits are appropriate for the common patterns of age-related prostate health management, not for acute or serious conditions that require clinical evaluation. If you are going to start today, if these 5 habits are going to become part of your daily life beginning now, go to the comments and type the words, "I'm starting today." Say it, because the men who commit to it out loud are consistently the ones who follow through. And if this conversation gave you something practical and useful, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, I bring you honest, clinically informed guidance to help men over 50 protect their health and improve their quality of life in ways that are simple, sustainable, and entirely within reach. Small daily habits can protect your prostate, and a protected prostate means better nights, better days, and a version of daily life that feels genuinely comfortable again. I'll see you in the next one, my friend. Take good care of yourself.